material, it has no lighting information, okay? And so you get these channels that you can potentially plug something into if you want to affect it. So like color, bump, transparency, etc. So when I'm making my materials in Maya, there's a bunch. In special circumstances, I will start with a different shader. But generally speaking, I'm using one of these. I'm either going to use a blend, a Phong, or a Phong-y material in Maya. Personally, I don't make too many materials in Maya because I build those materials in Engine, and that's my final output. So, but I'll show you the basics so you can make something if you ever want to render something out or get an idea on what it would look like. So the blend here, if you click on blend, the blend you can see has a little bit of a highlight. That means it's going to read some lighting information or how light's taking to it. It has a specular highlight, etc. So let's just go through these. You got color. Color is where you would plug in your diffuse, so your main map. So if you remember yesterday, we kind of worked on something like this a little bit, just to put something together real quick. That's where that color information goes, or we call it the diffuse. Transparency, if you've messed with this at all, or you just had it come in somewhat transparent, this is where you control the transparency of your shader. So in Maya, black is opaque, white is completely transparent, and you could have something completely transparent, and if you had a highlight, you'd still be able to see something, right? If it's catching light. Typically speaking, in most engines, it's actually the opposite from what I remember. Usually black is transparent, nothing's there, white is opaque. So just keep in mind, probably Maya's opposite of what's going to be an engine. You got an ambient color, which will allow you to just increase the overall brightness and condenses. Will allow this is like self-glowing. This, if you want this to look like a fluorescent bulb, you can crank this up a little bit and self-illumine a little bit. Bump map. This is where you put in your bump or your normal map. The difference is a bump map is only black and white in shades of gray, and a normal map is color information, much more accurate. But you do have to change that to either tangent space or world space normals. In most instances, you're always using tangent space. Diffuse, here you can bump up or change this diffuse. This is essentially a multiplier, or what would be considered a multiplier of the diffuse power in most engines. Translucency and these things here, I really don't use much of these very often, and if I recall correctly, these things affect how light travels through like semi-transparent surfaces such as water or glass, and so you could use these to effectively simulate how light bends through a type of surface. And then here you have, this is like all your specular shading info. In here, on this one, right here is where you would put in your gloss map, and here is where you put in your specular map. Reflectivity is where you decide how reflective it is. Reflective color, this is where you would plug in a cube map or an enviroball, something that imitates real-time reflection, but it's really not. So those will still be used for a long time. The only time you really see any real-time reflections, probably like on the main model or like the main asset on a first-person type game. Probably most of the props that you're seeing in game, they're just population assets. They're all over the place. They have some type of reflective property. The reflective color is most likely fake through some type of cube map or enviroball. It's just so much cheaper. So, and stuff that's littered throughout and it's small, you would never notice, but it still gets that really cool effect. Okay, so there's this. I use this one sometimes. I think this is kind of my go-to one, is the Phong. Then you have the Phong E. So in here, all the same settings. And here, your cushion is where you throw in your gloss. So again, in here, if I roll this back to a number, I'm essentially making it appear that the material is rough. So that's why it's getting a dispersed highlight. Okay, that's your cushion, and your specular color again is, this can be black, which is no specular. This is basically, I turn this into a Lambert, right, by doing that basically, or I can have a really hot highlight. So specular, the way to think of it is specular color is what color that highlight is, and they're not always white. A specular map can have color in it, and most likely should. Gloss maps are always black and white, the gloss, and all that is doing is controlling how tight or kind of wet or shiny something is, or how rough it is. Okay, so a darker gloss is rough, spreads out, disperses that light. You can see it still holds it hot, but it's just dispersed out. Here I can tighten up and make it look like something that's really shiny and shellacked. Or I could dial that down. I can bring this up and bring it out. So you can see I can literally change the properties from something that's in this ball. Maybe this is kind of like a rough plastic, something like that, to if I wanted to create a plastic that's more polished surface, maybe something like that. If I wanted to create a smooth metal surface, it would probably look something like that, maybe even a little bit bigger. Okay, then more dull, like marble. This would be probably more like marble, right? Still, that's dispersed across the whole thing, but not so hot. And again, something that's more metal, or maybe I wanted to create like something that's like glass, and glass would be something probably like that, something like that. Okay, so look at the specular action that you're getting is so pertinent to being able to sell what type of surface you have, right? How do you know what you see? How do you determine surface type of anything?
Light.
Light, right? Like, how do I know that wall is what type of surface that is without even touching it? Right? I can tell that that's not the same surface as that pillar. I know it's not the same material. I know that looks like concrete, it looks in real life as concrete, right? It's stupid, but you get the idea, right? Versus, what if that was a granite pillar? How would I know without touching it? How would I know from seeing it, depending on how big it is? A mile away, I can tell what surface it is just by looking at it. Before I would ever see, the individual tiles that's created from a bump map, right? From your normal map. I can tell what surface it is based on the color, first and foremost, and then the way light is hitting it, I can tell. And then as you get closer, then you get the normal map. So in order of importance, obviously color is the most important. I can sell a surface. If I have a good enough paint job on my diffuse map, with no spec and no normal, I can tell you what surface. You can tell somebody what surface that is just by the color or the diffuse. And then the spec is just going to further sell it, and then the normal map just controls the accented details along those flat surfaces. Okay? So this is where you plug those in. We got about 15 minutes to